Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to set up the weekend Ableton project for your campus location. I'm going to be going over the basic setup in the arrangement view. When you open up your Ableton weekend project for the first time, it's most likely going to open to the arrangement view. So there's two main modes or views or ways to play back content in Ableton, and that's session view and arrangement view. And we can use the tab button to toggle back and forth between the two. So this is arrangement view. If I press tab, I get to the session view, and pressing tab is going to get me back to the arrangement view. I just want to quick show you one or two things here in session view before we get to the arrangement view. Now you might see a song here, or possibly our baptism music or some other content that we might be playing back from session view, but most of the content for our weekend gatherings is going to be played from the arrangement view as of June 2021. Session view can be useful for playback of songs, and it works well for gatherings where you need just a few songs and not a ton of functionality, such as vision nights or funerals or other types of gatherings. So here I have a few songs from the weekend, just as an example. And if I go to the little flag over here, I can click on a song and it will play back.
3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So just know that if I play a song in session view and then go back to the arrangement view, you're not going to be able to then play back anything from arrangement view properly. So after playing this song here in session view and then tabbing back to arrangement view, you can see that the arrangement view now looks grayed out. So to get us back into the arrangement view mode, you're going to want to click on this button here called the Back to Arrangement button. And the other thing you're going to want to do after you play a song in session view and you try to get back to arrangement view is you're going to want to turn off this button here called Re-enable Automation. So just click on it so it's not orange anymore. And what that's going to do is it's going to reactivate the tempo automations we've created for each song in the arrangement view so that the songs play back in their correct tempos. One thing real quick, if you're new to Ableton, if you press the question mark key on your computer keyboard, it's actually Shift question mark, it's going to open up the help at the bottom left so that if you don't know what something is, you can just hover over that button or item and read the description here in the bottom left. So everything in this track display area here of the arrangement view is where our audio content is. These rectangular chunks of the audio files, Ableton calls these clips. So let's look at this first vertical row here of the clips that all belong to the song Battle Belongs. And you can see this little flag at the top that shows the song name and the key signature that the song is currently in. So if I'm using a trackpad, I can scroll down with two fingers to see the rest of the clips that are associated with Battle Belongs. Or if I'm on a mouse, I can go to the scroll bar here on the right and move that down. And by placing my mouse here right above this gray ruler timeline area, it's going to turn into a magnifying glass. And then I can click and drag this up and down vertically to zoom in and out horizontally of that area of the arrangement view. So arrangement view plays back left to right in a linear fashion, just like programs like Pro Tools or Logic Pro. So wherever I place the mouse pointer left to right in this track display, Ableton Live is going to start its playback from there when I press the space bar. And I press space bar to stop. Another way to play back sound in Ableton, if I take my mouse pointer and I put it in the timeline ruler again, and I put it right underneath the numbers, it's going to turn into this icon that looks like an audio symbol or a sound symbol. And then I just click it right where I want to play from. And that's another easy way to play back sound in Ableton. So the next song here along the timeline is Raise a Hallelujah, and you can see all of its associated click tracks and backing track clips. So basically you can see that all the clips that are on top of each other vertically will play back at the same time. So one thing that's really important to realize here is that all the clips that are on the same horizontal strip are on the same track with similar track controls, and they also have the same output destination. And the track controls are over here on the right. And if you aren't seeing these controls, make sure these 3 buttons are turned on and yellow. So here's the name of the track. This is the physical audio output destination of the track. Here's the solo button. And I can solo multiple tracks together by command clicking on multiple solo buttons. And this yellow button here deactivates and reactivates a track. It's a lot like mute. And this is your volume for the track. So for every new weekend, when you get an Ableton project, it's going to have the same look to it with the same track names and color scheme. When we set this template up years ago, we wanted to come up with a way to do this so that all similar types of clicks and backing tracks will be grouped visually and outputted in a logical and easy to use way for both the worship leader and the tech engineers. The first group of these red clips are for our click track and count off, and they all get outputted to output 8. So one of the first things you're going to do when you get your weekend project is set your outputs. So I'm going to shift click on all the red tracks so I can select all these at once. And first let's make sure this top box says external or ext period, and that means external output. And then in the box just below, we're going to choose output 8. So if you don't see 8 as an option, just choose configure here. And that's going to take us to the output configuration here in the preferences. And then I'm going to turn on mono and stereo outputs for 1 to 8. Now I have all the outputs that I'll need available to me, and I can choose 8. This yellow track called songs and the clips that are on it are the original recordings of the songs that we are doing for the weekend. We often refer to these audio files as reference tracks. So naturally you want this track deactivated for when you are performing the songs live. But it can be activated and used for rehearsal purposes to play back from a specific spot in a song, or if you're editing and need to find the exact timing in the song to make the edit. And we're going to output this to 8 as well. This next grouping of purplish tracks and clips here is for our percussion and drum loops, and we're going to output these to stereo group 1 and 2. Drum and percussion loops will most likely already be set to 1 and 2, so you're not going to need to change those. Below that, we have synth aux 1 through 4, and that's 4 tracks that contain synth pads and other main synth parts, and we're going to output that to stereo pair 3, 4. Synth aux 5 to 8 is another 4 tracks that contain other synth parts that are a bit more specific in nature to a specific song, and they also often contain BGV tracks with effects on them. And we'll send these to stereo group 5 and 6. And these white clips and tracks are for real instruments like guitar, bass, keys, and also main BGV parts. So we have male key and female key specific tracks and clips for each of these, just because of the transposition issues that you run into with having to transpose a really far distance. And these can be outputted to 5 and 6 as well. This track here is called A Loop Sends, and it's going to be strictly for stage monitoring with the in-ear monitoring system. So not every location uses this, so if you need it, you're going to need to activate it. And this is actually a bus track, so you're not going to see any clips on its track area, but instead other backing tracks and instrument tracks send some of their signal to this destination. Now, we set this up ahead of time before we send out the Ableton project, but for whatever reason, if you would happen to add another track for some other purpose for your campus, you're going to want to make sure that you turn up the bus send on that track so that you can hear it in your in-ear monitoring system. So here we see each individual track has this blue slider here, and this is the bus send to the A-loop send bus track. And as you can see, we set the volume of these to around -8, and that should already be done for you. So you're not going to want to send your click track or your reference track to this A loop send track, because click and reference track, they go to output 8, which comes in on a discrete input into your personal digital mixer. So setting these individual outputs 1 to 6 for your backing tracks and your instrument tracks is going to allow your front of house sound engineer some flexibility when mixing. For instance, let's say if they need more volume on the drum and percussion backing tracks for a song, they can turn up the backing track channels 1 to 2 on their mixing console for that particular song. Now, if you have the need to use an instrument track for a weekend, and we have it available here in the Ableton project, so in this example we have the lead guitar part, you can send that out of, let's say, output 6 discretely for all of the songs, and then send synth aux tracks 5 to 8 out of mono output 5. So now you've created separation for your sound engineer to control the volume of the tracked lead guitar part separate from the rest of the backing tracks. There's really no hard and fast rules when setting your backing track and instrument outputs, but just know that in the documentation we send out to front of house engineers and worship leaders every week, we go with our template standard, which I just went through. So if you want to change where the backing tracks and the instrument tracks are typically routed, please communicate that change to your front of house engineer. So the one exception to this is when we have the need for a SMPTE audio track for video sync purposes, which plays out of Ableton. Then on the campuses that don't have a spare output for that purpose, so that would be campuses that need to use that A loop send channel going to output 7, those campuses will need to send their SMPTE track out of output 6 and not use output 6 for anything else. When music production sends out the Ableton project, we try to have activated and pre-mixed the individual backing track clips we think most campuses will need for their gatherings. But one thing you're going to want to do on your campus is listen through the backing tracks for each song and choose what you want to use and what you don't want to use, and possibly make some small volume adjustments. So let's say I'm listening through and I get here to this organ clip for Battle Belongs. So let's solo it. And I know that my keys player is going to be playing this organ part live. So just as best practices in this process is to touch base with your players, especially keyboard players, ahead of time so that you can talk through with them what they're going to be playing for a particular song so that you can deactivate that part if it's in the backing tracks. You definitely don't want to have the backing tracks playing the same part as the live musician, because it's just going to make the mix more cluttered and a bit more muddy. Now, the best way to remove this organ part here, you could delete it by just selecting it and pressing delete, but you may, for whatever reason, need to get it back. Or you could say, well, let's just deactivate the track that it's on. But the problem with that is that it's going to also deactivate or mute, or however you want to look at it, this pulse synth part from the song Beauty and the Death, which is also on the same track. So the way that we're going to do this is just to deactivate the clip itself by selecting it and pressing the 0 key on your computer keyboard. 0 will also activate a deactivated clip. Let's say I'm listening through and I realize that these claps on Raise a Hallelujah are just a tad bit too loud for me, but I still want them in there a little bit in the mix. So you could, in theory, go over to the volume on the track that they reside on and turn down the volume. But now the claps for Battle Belongs are also brought down in volume, and I don't want that. So the best method is to double-click on the claps for Raise a Hallelujah, and what's going to happen is the clip view is going to open up below. So the clip view has controls for the individual clip, which are separate and independent of the track controls. So here is the gain slider, and I'm just going to turn that down about 3 or 4 dB. The clip view is also where we are going to make our key transpositions for clips that need to be transposed for the key that you are going to do a song in. So we're not going to need to transpose anything in drums or percussion, but let's say I'm doing Battle Belongs in the key of B, and as I said before, it's currently in the key of C shown on the name tag above. So I'm going to go through all the melodic and harmonic clips for Battle Belongs and change them from C to B. So let's start here with the reference track. I'm going to double click on it. Let's go to the transpose knob here for the clip. So I know that changing from C to B is -1 semitone, so I'm going to make a -1 adjustment to its current state. Now we can go to the pads. And so on and so forth. Two other ways I can adjust the values that are attached to knobs and sliders in Ableton is, let's just click on this area again. You can see I have these 4 brackets around the corners here of the transpose area. And now I can just type in a value. So let's say I want -4. I can type that in and press enter. Or I can use the left and right arrow keys to change the transposition. And this method also works for the gain. Now, real quick, if you're using Ableton 11, the clip view looks a little bit different than it did in 10. So here's your gain for clip volume. And this is the transpose. Let's take a look at the click track and the count off and show you what's going on with that. So we have 3 tracks here in red: click down, click up, and count in. Click down is going to be the downbeat, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and click up will be the ands, 1 and 2 and 3 and. So we have the click up track playing a bit quieter here. We have it in the track volume turned down just a couple dBs. And you can hear that the subdivision works well for keeping the band tighter, especially on slower songs. For faster songs, I recommend turning the click up down a bit in volume accordingly so that you are not hearing it as loud. So let's say the tempo of your song is faster, it's 140 BPM. You're not going to want to hear in your ears, dot, 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 dot. So in that instance, you could deactivate click up altogether for that song, or you could just turn that clip down in volume. And again, the music production team is going to have this already pre-mixed for you, so you're not going to need to make any drastic changes with it. And for the count in track, we try to keep it real simple with just 1 count in right before the downbeat start of the song.
Three, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and please check out some of the other videos I have on this same topic.